Hey, everybody, this is Ben Foost, the Chief Knob Turner at the Uncommon Wealth Podcast. Special treat for you this week. We're pulling an episode back from the archives. We did an interview with Caleb Walsh, and it's such a cool story. We wanted to make sure you had a chance to dig on it if you hadn't. Dude goes from no rental properties, less than 10 grand in the bank, first kid on the way, credit card debt up to his eyeballs, and buys an $800,000 multiplex. Could be a disaster. Turns out awesome. It's such a cool story. I hope you enjoy it. Fresh content next week, and enjoy the show.
Everyone dreams about living an uncommon life, but how we define that dream is very different for each of us. And for most, it's a lifelong pursuit. Welcome to the Uncommon Life Project podcast. We're going to introduce you to people who are living that life or enjoying the journey to get there. We're going to also give you some tools, tricks, and tips for starting or accelerating your own efforts to live an uncommon life, a life worth celebrating and savoring. Please welcome your hosts, Brian Dewhurst and Phillip Ramsey.
Welcome, everybody. This is Phillip Ramsey.
And I'm Brian Dewhurst.
We're coming at you with another podcast of the Uncommon Life Project. Thank you so much. Let's call her Frankie today. Thank you for the intro, Frankie. I really appreciated it. We have a great show for you today with Caleb Walsh, one of my close friends. We met, I'd say, 10 years ago.
Yeah, 9 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, at an investment conference. And I can't wait for you just to unpack some of the knowledge that he's found throughout the years. And I really think that this is going to help some of our listeners who are sitting at a desk job move forward to kind of cast a bigger vision than even they think now.
So let me rattle off Caleb's bio and we'll jump in.
Totally.
So Caleb is a leading authority in affordable housing with portfolios spanning over 1,500 units in 6 states. And he has not been out this for 25 years. He resides in Tampa, Florida with his wife, Denise, and their 2 children, Lincoln and Noelle. He's an economy of scale advocate, which we are as well. And his story just involves jumping from 5 units to 500 units in a short amount of time. And by units, we're meaning properties or doors. And so his story is seen on social media, tracked all over the web with the theme 500 doors. So welcome, Caleb Walsh.
Thank you for having me on, guys. This is great.
Oh, absolutely. All right, let's just jump right in like we always do. And a guy like you never really had a desk job. Am I right?
Oh, I had plenty of them. I probably had one in many different roles, I had everything from a sales job to just a little customer service rep. I've had roles where my entire job existed where they actually would be the angry customers that would call in. And that's all I got to talk with. So you learn to keep a smile on your face or it really doesn't work.
Totally. And so did you always have this dream of owning many real estate properties, or did this just come in the last couple of years?
It's actually interesting. The answer is no. The answer is, I think I had a more idealistic kind of like, you kind of grow up and everybody in America wants to be a rock star, right? Or some version of that. And I think growing up through the teen years, I had some version of that. My dad was a contractor. I did see some, firsthand, I'd see business transactions go on at a young age. But really, I had that realization about those transactions and the education I was getting through that later. Mm-hmm. Growing up, honestly, it was kind of a joke. I never wanted to have anything to do with anything my parents had going on business wise. Anything, no. You had a dream, but no, I really, it was at a point. I basically think a breaking point where I realized it was a necessity for me to have this many properties.
Interesting. Okay. Walk us through that trigger point. Okay. And where were you at the time? Like, were you at home? Were you at a desk job?
Yeah. So it started out where I had recently got married, and I was, you pitch the girl of your dreams on the life of her dreams.
Yes.
And then on the other side of happily ever after, you figure out you got to pay the bills. And
those things keep coming
They just
every
keep
month.
coming.
I don't understand it.
It's like this cyclical nature of life thing. I don't know what it is, but no. And so I was venturing in real estate. I was attempting to flip homes. And this is shortly thereafter the economic meltdown, right? Mm-hmm. So I was in Florida at the time. And in Florida, between Florida and Las Vegas, it was the epicenter for a lot of the, drastic foreclosure happenings that happen in mass scale. So what I was doing, I had attended all those fun workshops and all those things where they say 1, 2, 3 passive income, you've got it. and I was on that bandwagon, and I was attempting to flip homes, which I would here or there. But then I found out very quickly it wasn't as 1, 2, 3 as they said.
Yeah.
All those seminar guys, different guys, you attend a 3-week weekend, a 3-day weekend or something of that nature. And I found myself attempting to flip properties, and they would always take 3 to 4 months longer than I thought it would take to flip.
And maybe a little bit more money than you thought too. Exactly.
Because what ends up happening when you're waiting that long, basically it's on credit cards. It's on they had 2 programs. I remember Lowe's and Home Depot had a 6-month and one had an 18-month no pay program where it was basically like you didn't get any interest during that wait time, but if you didn't pay it off before then, it compounded and you got hit. Yeah. You got smacked in the face pretty hard.
You're playing the options real estate game. If you don't know about options, exactly, you'll understand it then.
I was losing my options really fast. So and at that point, so you're trying to hold up such an amount of debt.
Sure.
Yeah.
And this is where I tell people oftentimes that debt was using me. I wasn't using debt. Like it was not me infinitely using leverage to obtain wealth. I was ensuring I would never have it.
You were enslaved.
Yeah.
Yes.
Newly married and slowly up against this time clock of pressure, stress.
Sheesh.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. We can go into that, but let's keep going.
So it continues on where, my wife and I were doing the HGTV thing where you see everybody, the flip or the flop, where they go in and they take this ugly house, they make it this mansion, they flip it, they make $150,000. It just looks all so marvelous. And then somewhere in the middle, we found out that while we're living in this like half renovated home, my wife is pregnant.
Oh, wow.
And that's so we had some compounding reality that put the hammer down. Because now you realize, oh wow, we're gaining dependence, So here we are. We're in a half renovated home, which was supposed to be a flip. You're real flexible when you're just a couple. You feel like, oh yeah, this is, we're renovating this. She's doing this, and now she can't even handle paint fumes. It's
renovation and morning sickness never seem to go well together.
No, it doesn't work out so well. And there's even a little bit more to it. And this is funny because when I'm remembering this now, but when we went off, when we were talking offline, I remembered I didn't mention this. Basically, during that time, there was a very famous court case happening in the town where I was trying to flip properties. And it put a lot of racial tensions, crime areas at play in a way that it just made it next to impossible to flip properties. And so between that, it basically every day it compounded the problems that were building, the debt, the payments. I think I remember the city, I had thought, wow, there's all these historic properties that you can renovate. They're in these historic areas. You fix them up. They're all antique-y. They're gorgeous. They look at like something out of Restoration Hardware. And then you find out very quickly that those are the worst places to flip properties because the city gives you a litmus test and says, just throwing this out there, you have to restore it to this 1911 code. You have to...
awesome. That doesn't sound expensive at all.
Exactly. So I have learned a lot of lessons in that regard. And that's where I started.
Okay, so it seems like it starts buckling down a little bit on you and Denise because now you're pregnant. So now you're not only fighting the credit card time crunch, you're fighting like a human being being made inside your wife.
Right.
So where did you go to? Where did you turn? Did you turn to?
And real quick, you had a day job too, right?
So this is really where I had to stop attempting the day job thing. I had to stop attempting the entrepreneurial thing and jump full head on. You know, I was half doing the side job entrepreneurial thing. This was commitment now. Now you're
trading your time for your money at this point. You're going back to this 9 to 5.
Cubicle of doom. You got
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
The cubicle of
Well,
doom.
I think, Caleb, this is an important point because, you know, Phil, we meet with a lot of people and they're making good income. They have an idea and they just want to dip that toe in.
Right.
And once you dip that toe in, you don't want it to ever come out.
Right.
But you're also not going to be successful because you're just not all in. So I think I think you've seen the power of that. So keep going.
It is. It's actually a very hard thing because the more and more I do, I realize focus is power. And so what I had and I found myself in was there were about, I believe I got up at that time, I'm thinking 4 or 5 properties right in there that I couldn't flip. That for whatever reason, locally, economically, whatever happened, and I'm strapped, I'm held down with these properties, right? Like I said, with credit cards, everything else. And these properties I was not able to flip, and it forced me into a position where I really had to completely leave all these dreams of real estate, entrepreneurial things, and really just commit to a daily job. I was trading my hours in. I was, you know, I remember I had to make 88 outbound calls a day. Just to keep a maintained level. I mean, that's not the sales you have to make. That's not the, and you know, I was doing that because the quickest thing to jump into when you need money really fast is a sales job, right? You know, okay, you jump in, you here's your base, but then you can attempt to get commissions on top of that. And so being the energetic, motivated guy I was like, all right, we're going to do some sales. We're going to get ourselves out of this, pay all this debt down, maybe flip these homes when the economy comes back up. And wasn't that that was we had them for a while still.
So when I imagine, like, I kind of know you differently than I think probably Bryan does, but you're a pretty energetic guy. You even mentioned it there. So when you go back to the cubicle of doom, I have a feeling that you thought like this was the responsible thing to do. I'm going to provide for my wife now, newly
I had a son coming.
Pregnant, newly pregnant wife. So I feel like you probably had a pretty good attitude walking in the cubicle of doom. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, no, you're right. In fact, I remember, it's funny you mentioned that because I remember as I'm walking in, you know, you're the new guy, you're walking in. It literally was a massive, expansive room of just these great cubicles. And like chipmunks, you'd see the little heads popping up.
Groundhog's Day. Literally Groundhog Day.
Yeah. I mean, it was that. You could think in a hammer, bam, bam, bam. But basically what I saw was I realized instantly all these discouraged faces popping up. And I remember thinking as I walked in, my first reaction was, this is where dreams go to die.
Wow. Which is your first dose of reality.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because you got managers over you, especially when you're in your first 90 days, you got managers standing over you, ensuring your performance. And so just even the mental exhaustion you experience, there's no more creative thinking happening.
Right.
There's no like, maybe if I created this side business or this side hustle that I could, it's not even there. You're so just trying to survive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great survival mentality, especially when you have debt outside of those walls.
Exactly.
Who are bringing you down.
So you've
It
got
means so much more to keep your job at that point.
So what did you do with these properties? You're hustling during the day.
Yep.
You've
Hustling
got these
during the day.
properties.
And this goes on for a while. It's not like 1, 2, 3. Like I was, 6, 7, 8 months. I'm in one of these jobs, and it's just over and over. And I'd be attempting side things on the side to, maybe pick up a little night job at a hotel doing the receptionist role. Just a little something. I'd work. Wow. There was actually at one time period where I actually was working. I was doing overnights, and then I'd do another job during the day. And and I remember somebody asking, when did you sleep? And I said, hey, we'll work that out. These are just fine details. but the thing is, not only did I have the basic living expenses we have in America, I had these homes and credit cards and things.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like, oh, and I think of it as the most damaging time period in my life financially, because I was doing a good thing. I was being responsible, but because I had gone out a little bit, I had done a couple homes, I had done a little bit, I was retracting now. This was I'm on the operating table level.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was cutting up credit cards at some stage, just in case I, pay the balances down far enough. I don't want to use them,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so that's where I found myself.
You're in the cubicle of doom. When was the point when you're like, nope, I can't do it anymore? Or was it Denise telling you like, nope, I can't do this anymore?
Well, we always had, yeah, exactly. Well, I knew that one would follow the other. What? No, but didn't want that day to come. So no, what I found is we were always having discussions. But again, I go back to that mental exhaustion you have when you are trading your hours in, your life hours, the mental exhaustion, the creativity is not there. And so we had, everybody makes New Year's resolutions, right? So people make New Year's resolutions. It's typically a diet. It's typically weight loss. It's typically something, sometimes financial. And we had the opportunity where family members got together. I was working a sales job again, this was in advertising now. And we had an opportunity over Christmas, New Year's, that time period there. Companies give you off naturally. And family got together in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. A lot of family members, they all kind of chipped in, rented a cabin. And for a very short window of time, this is how powerful it is to have a pause. But for a very short window of time, Denise and I had what felt like a very long time, but it probably was only the matter of an hour or two or three to think. And we knew we had to do something, or you could see the trajectory of our lives just continuing. Maybe we get a little bonus or we get a little advance, and now I get a little bit higher in corporate America, but still I'd be just above, water. And so we had time to think, and we said, all right, what's working? What do we have? All right, here's our finances. Here's our debt. Here's our liabilities. What do we actually have here? And I said, man, we still have those funny 4 or 5 rental houses that were supposed to be flips. So they're all over leveraged, which means any income coming out of them isn't a lot. I think it was $800 or $900 total. And everything else was over leverage. It may not have been that much. I bet if Denise was standing here, she'd be like, yeah, $500, not $800. She's like, yeah, barely half of that. And so, so we got something that's not enough income to live off of, not even close. It's just a little bit of something.
Teaser. Just a
teaser. But the funny thing is they, all the time, I'm working these day jobs, I'm doing side hustles, night jobs, everything I can do just to stay above the debt cycle. They kept paying, right? Like these rental properties, these income properties were paying this little tidbit that I turned to Denise and I said, the only stinking things that have worked consistently without me just, willing it to happen has been these rental properties. They don't make a lot of money, but what if we had 30 of them? And Denise's like, yeah, how are we getting 30 of them? I'm like, no, that's not important. Those are just details again, right?
Yes.
So that's where, we're there. It's a New Year's, and we're people are making resolutions, blah, blah, blah. And I said, we have got to get a multi-family property. We have got to get a multi-family property. We do that, and that will allow me to quit the day job. And I'll do every role. I'll fix things. I'll rent things. I'll knock on doors. I'll clean out units. Whatever that means, I'll do it because we'll have enough skill to handle the income. Now, I had never done anything quite like that before. I had done it on very micro levels, but I just saw that if you could, we could have a building. Think about that. We could even move into the building. There was all sorts of ideas flowing, right? We'll live in one unit. Now we don't have to pay rent. Now we do this.
Yeah.
So at this point, one of our, where it really hit home is one of our tenants moved out of the homes and we were met with a vacancy. So we were like, heck, why are we paying rent? Let's move in. There's still a mortgage payment on that property. Let's move in. And we moved into that house. And so now we're moving into a rental property, right? So now income's getting less, whatever that $800 or $900 coming in. Now it really is cut in half, right?
Now
and so it's getting real. But now we had this thing where we said, God, get multifamily property. And this is the next phase where, all right, so we made a commitment. We're like, we're doing whatever it takes. I don't know how this works. By the way, my credit was not that good at this time. Like I'm talking probably 500s something. Just holding that much debt to income.
Yeah, if you think about that, it's those credit cards with zero interest that have got a little out of hand, and there it goes.
Yeah, we had my income, and then they saw my debt, and
ta-da, no more.
So that's where I find myself, and I'm at this stage where we made a commitment and we got to do something. We're going to do something drastic.
Back up. So you get this realization over New Year's, but you're still at the 9 to 5. You're still a cubicle of doom, right?
Yep. Oh, big time.
Okay.
Big time.
Okay.
Yep.
So you have to go back there, but you have this grandiose idea.
Yes.
How do you
we had a second to think, and now we're going back. Holidays are over, right?
Yeah. So now what? You go to cubicle of doom.
Cubicle of doom, and again, you find yourself. I had no time, and as farther it was from New Year's, the farther I found myself. Like, we were just being. It was the
Dude,
one.
I'm cheered for you. I'm over here cheering for you, doesn't it? Yes, I'm cheered for you. Like, you got to get out of the time suck over there.
Yeah, I mean, really, and that's the thing. You feel you're in this time vortex, and I said the only time I have to attempt somehow magically to get a multifamily property. And by the way, I didn't have like money to put as a down payment or anything like that. I basically had $8 or $9 grand that I somehow had scratched everything I ever had. I probably sold a car, this type of thing. That's it.
Yeah, you had an idea, right?
Yeah, I had an idea. It was an idea. So basically, I had an hour lunch break. And I had this completely unrealistic goal that I was going to call 150 listings, real estate listings in an hour. If you think about it, it mathematically does not make sense.
Right, totally.
It doesn't even compute.
But what I love about this is that you were supposed to make 88 calls on your regular job, which you wanted to double that.
Yeah.
For who? You, right?
Yeah. Yep.
It was for you finally.
That's
and
funny. I actually have never put that together. That's
ta-da. But it's for you now. And so this double unrealistic goal now seems like I can get this done for me and Denise and my new unborn child.
Yes.
Powerful. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Love it.
So we find ourselves here and I start making calls and you guess what happens. I'm laughed off the call almost every phone call. I start asking, I get questions like, well, yeah, no, we have a 30-unit apartment for sale or a 38-unit apartment building for sale. Send over your proof of funds and then we'll send you more information.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that's an objection to try to handle, and so then I kept calling, and there was the thing that was somewhat exciting was there was a couple brokers, there was a couple realtors, and there was a couple for sale by owners that for whatever reason, I had probably compassion, did send me over their financials. And so I had a couple 30-unit apartment buildings or thereabouts that sent over financials, profit loss statements, different things that said, okay, this is how much. So over this course of time, which is going on for a little while now, this wasn't like immediately, I was becoming familiar with what a 30-unit passive income real estate property looked like income-wise.
Yeah. Yes. You were like getting an education for free.
And give the listener an idea of how much money was the purchase price on some of these that you're looking at? What's the ballpark?
Starting just like there was nothing under 800,000. And I was looking at some really crummy stuff, right? I'm trying to look at, I'm like, well, maybe it's not so hood, it's I'm like, Detroit, what? So I know I was actually looking really only in Florida, which is something I learned about later and I'll go into, but basically I'm looking, it started 800,000, couple million. And, these are numbers I can't even compute at this point. I'm like, this is crazy, but I got to keep it. And the longer I kept getting rejected, I I felt farther from that original idea.
Sure.
I really did. Like, was this real? Here I am. I'm making the sales calls, doing this, and this is. Then I'm calling, and where I had a shift, and I started getting some positive results. Was I found a seller who was desperate to sell. They were absentee landlord. They were out of the state already, so they were not in Florida. And I believe, if I remember correctly, their management just changed. Like, their manager quit. Something had just transpired that added urgency. And I found, I think it was on Craigslist, I found some ad for a 30 unit, but here's the catch. Mobile home park. So I don't know about you guys, but in American culture, that's not the hottest beachfront property to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at apartment complexes in Detroit, you're kind of like, well, where else are we going to go here? You know?
I guess, you start
But
signing.
it is true. I mean, I think there is that stigma, unfortunately, and now that, Philip's family obviously owns a mobile home park, and
That's right.
And you get around it and it's like, whoa, not only are these human beings and real people, but it's real money. Yeah.
True. And that's what I found out at that point. I asked for what little paperwork they had to prove their financials, which ended up, by the way, being a lot more like bank statements versus profit and loss statements, where these fancy apartment complexes had profit and loss.
Yeah.
I was getting raw bank statements, and Denise and I were sitting at a kitchen table piecing this together at night, trying to figure out heads from tails. And then we would drive by the property, and it was a 30-unit mobile home park. It had room for expansion, but it was 30 units that were, on location.
30 trailers.
30 trailers. And I was like, gross. I think pimps, prostitutes, drug dealers. I mean, you're thinking the place is going to be raided every day with, this is my thought process.
Sure.
But when I put the apartment complex and I put the trailer park or mobile home park side by side, it was bringing in more money. And this was in the absentee owner condition.
Yeah. Wow.
Less overhead. A lot of other factors I can go into, but I very quickly took a second look and didn't pass over it. And it was kind of funny because I don't know if the guy wasn't getting a lot of hits or what was going on. I actually kind of blew the seller off a little bit. Like, I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm still looking into that, but not so interested. And so what ended up happening is I kept driving by it. And I remember Denise and I actually went fairly late at night, which is not a very good idea. With
you want to hit that thing fresh in the morning.
You want early. Don't go like 8, 9, 10. Okay, you're throwing that out there. And when we go there late at night, we're like, okay, there's something to this. We can figure this out. And so I said, all right, now let's get to the stage of where we're at. So I just started. I mean, I'm black and white. I've got nothing to prove at this point. I'm telling the guy, I'm like, hey, what can we do with $10,000? What can we $9,000 and not even 10? I'm doing everything trying to put some down. And he was just like, oh wow, he's backpedaling. Yeah. And I was doing sales, so I'm using my sales bill. I said, hey, listen, we got a rental business. I'm not telling about my day job, not talking anything like that.
And in full like disclosure, Caleb, you and I met in a conference who would kind of teach us how to do different things in different deals and
non-traditional financing. And so this stuff probably didn't scare you as much, but now it's real life. Like, now everything that we've learned
every day
is now
from
like
the seminar to the streets.
Yep.
And it was interesting because the thing that was a disconnect is the rejection you get. Right. So there was truths in a lot of these workshops and seminars we were at, but they make it sound like it's easier to get these things financed. It's easier. There's a lot of things, but you're right. My synapses gaps were opened up to the possibility that there must be something outside the possibility of walking into Wells Fargo, and walking into Bank
I'm awesome.
Saying, listen, my debt's up here. I've got this, but finance me, right?
Sure.
So the property, by the way, was in the 800,000 range.
Okay.
So on the lower end of your range with the stuff you're looking at.
It was. And so that was somewhat attractive as well because the debt service was not nearly as high as some of these apartment complexes. And by the way, there was no way I was getting these apartment complexes. Like we were talking, they were turning me down. These were traditional brokers. Nothing was happening. But at the same time, it was kind of awesome because I went side by side, mobile home parks making more. I start going into it and I'm trying to figure out, and out of sheer desperation, I start looking for private lenders. And my concept there was, I think I had that American, almost the version of something you'd see in a movie surrounding the tech bubble, or something where Steve Jobs sitting in his garage and some guy shows up with $100,000 and offers it to him right then, right? See, I'm looking for that angel investor who stacks cash. Found out very quickly they didn't exist. At least
there's that.
They weren't in my circle of influence. And I had no relative that would loan me money. I had no parent, uncle, aunt, nothing of that nature that I could draw on to get financing. So I found myself in a position where I was looking, how can I get this purchase? I've got a seller who wants to sell. I'm the buyer. How do we make this happen? And so I started looking, and I found pretty much the only remote, rare possibility was very high interest shark lenders who essentially would put a lien against the property and use that collateral instead of looking at my poor financial setup. Because they had something to take when I went belly up. In fact, it almost seemed as if they were planning on me.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude,
Plan B was plan A for them.
Yeah.
Right. So I put a second mortgage on my house. The house I was living in, remember, it was a rental property. And it wasn't.
Wow.
Second mortgage on my house, and that's how I financed the actual acquisition. And all of a sudden, I have this 30-unit mobile home park.
Wow.
Now what?
Yeah.
So I find myself doing every single role. And by the way, I kept my day job at this point because I had this. Not only did I just have all this debt service, I have a newborn child. I've got to, there's a lot at play here, and so I am doing every role, which really essentially turned into me being gone on weekends. So I'm working all during the day. Sometimes late at night after work, I drive up to the park.
This park isn't across the street, right?
It's not. It was actually about 3.5 hours from my house.
Wow.
So, you think about that. So you're doing 6 hours both ways. I really didn't have the budget to stay in a hotel, not even a budget hotel. And so I would be doing that trek. But when I did that trek, so for the first time ever, I was forced to learn property management in a way that was, I'm cleaning out units, I'm showing units, I'm figuring out repairs or getting someone to do a repair in budget, not just opening up, the book and calling the first guy. I did that initially. You'd get these massive quotes to redo the plumbing here. And I was like, oh, no, we're not even bringing that in a month,
Yeah. When you have shark lenders as your your investors, you got to think differently.
And that's the whole thing, right? So the income, there was income coming in immediately, which felt cool, by the way. Like I had never quite had where you saw income coming in. It all went back out because I'm paying the shark lender, I'm paying the debt service.
But you got that taste.
I got that taste. I saw real people writing real checks, paying for rent. And at that point, I realized, I said, wow, there is something to that. Basic needs are the real thing, like food, water, shelter. If you're in one of those big three, there's always a need. And so at that point, I do everything. I learned I did everything wrong. And then later learned I could do everything right. But I had the property for 8 months. And during that course of 8 months, I tripled the existing rent roll.
Wow.
And it didn't happen right away. It actually more happened toward the tail end of that 8-month period. And so we tripled the rent roll. And even though that sounds great, it still wasn't enough for me to financially be able to beeline it out of my day job.
Sure.
Yeah. Because I'm carrying this, I'm doing that. It was a little bit, we got a little slither of something coming in. And that hit me to my next step where I was going to try something a little bit different. And I said, just out of curiosity, I don't even know if there's people that buy mobile home parks other than me. I was the one guy that,
got suckered into it.
He got suckered into it. But because, it's a lot of hassles. When you have 30 units calling in, and by the way, they had my cell phone number. It's not like I had some
You're the guy. They're calling.
It's me, right? And at 2:00 in the morning, all of that, and it was always being able to deal with that was something that I really got taught through this time period too. Because I get I was taken advantage of. I found out that everybody dies between the last week of the month and the first of the month.
Crazy.
Yeah, amazing. It happens every month though. So same people. So anyway, so you find all these little tidbits out, and I listed the property for sale because I said, hey, we did some real value here. I wonder if there's a buyer out there. And I got all the other guys calling that went to the same seminars I did. And I knew they were in the same setup I was.
Yeah.
And there really wasn't any deal to be had. And so I'm sitting there, and I was just about to take those ads down. It was a Saturday morning. I'm in the parks. I'm driving through the park, going through units. I think had some showings showing up, and someone called me, and it was a cash buyer. And I actually almost laughed him off the phone. I almost said, yeah, right. Sure, buddy. I've heard this already. I know. And you're just flipping a contract, or there's some catch here. And he inquired, and he didn't quite like my asking price, and he was getting off the phone. But what I did was, I sent him some more information, and really that day I had an offer sitting in front of me.
Wow.
And what was that offer compared to how many times you paid for it?
Yeah. So the offer I got, it was well over six figures over what I had purchased it for
8 months, mind you.
Yeah. And so and a large bit about that was verifying whether I was telling the truth about my rent roll. Mm-hmm. Great thing is, my wife, prior to getting married to me, did 7 years of public accounting.
There you go.
So my books were clean. There may have not been a lot in the books, but they were very clean.
They were clean, squeaky clean,
red but clean.
And so that was very easy to represent that. And within about 13 days, it was somewhere in that range. The property sold.
Wow. That is such.
I got to ask a Phillip question here because we're going off script. You just went through a ton. You're working 2 jobs, 3.5 hours away. You have a newborn child. Yep. We need to talk about your wife for a second. Because, what was that like to have her? She obviously was supportive of this path, which is, most women probably wouldn't be. Walk us through that.
It's interesting because we actually didn't see each other that often if you put together the chronological amount of things I was doing. And we did. But it was, oh, hey, it's 8 o'clock at night. How's it going? Or, oh, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm heading off to work.
Because you do have 2 kids, right? Come on.
Yeah.
You get to a little bit.
You must have at some point. Come on, buddy. You mess up.
You got a weekend in there.
But basically, and really what it was is, the more I was into it and the more I had put on my plate, I had this desire to own time. It wasn't even really about the money. I just had this almost dream in my head to have some utopia where time was possible. Mm-hmm. And so I had stacked the odds, right? I mean, we're either going down or it's going to happen. And at this point, so this happens, the property sells. I remember that wire hitting my very, very dry bank account. and like sitting there hitting refresh, and all of a sudden, and I had 6 figures for the first time, really, in my adult life. And I was looking at it, and I said, "Oh wow, pause. I can breathe."
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I quit on my day job.
Yeah. I like me now. Cubicle of doom.
Yeah.
Did you have like a Jerry Maguire moment? Carried a fishbowl.
Yeah. I mean,
and all the groundhogs.
Thank God it's not on video, right?
Yeah. All the groundhogs stood up and watched you walk out.
There was. And then, so here I am. This great thing happens. I'm trying to not tell too many people because I'm waiting for all the family members to hit me up with loans or something. And I'm thinking, wow, this is awesome. A couple days pass, kind of thinking, what's next? And I got hit in the gut so hard. And this is what I got hit in the gut with. Mm-hmm. I basically get hit in the gut with the fact that, oh man, all those years, all those shadows. I had a pay down fest, which was kind of cool. I don't know if that's like one of the most fun things to do. Okay, 2,000 in credit cards.
Ding.
So I had a pay down fest. But at that point, you get hit in the gut saying, I cannot go back now. I cannot go back. The shadows haunt me. Like I literally cannot go back. And so here I am at a point where I said, we have really done something. We've made mileage. We've made some ground. And I mean, it scared me so bad that we moved on to the next step, which was kind of an all out. I said, we got to find another one of these. We've done it. We can do it again. Sure, it was a lot of hassles. It was kind of cool for a couple of days to not have those tenants calling in. You know, all of a sudden it's like, wow, just transferred the number and there you go. And I don't have to deal with the hassles. But now I said, oh man, we got to do this again because this has worked. And quite frankly, in a big way, this is the only thing that has. Right? Like this isn't just getting a bonus at work. This was life altering.
Sure.
And I could see myself being the happy lotto winner who's right back at it in, 4
Where'd that go?
yeah, exactly. And I was like, no option here.
Caleb, I think you're unique because we have lots of clients that own real estate. I think, obviously lots of people around the country, world own real estate, but where was the genesis for the idea to kind of put a brand around or a name around what you were doing? Because I think that makes you really uncommon, not to be cliche with the podcast name and all.
Sure.
But I think it's really important distinction about, your path forward.
Yeah, no. So at that point, what I started doing is in a very short window of time, I had bought my next mobile home park and I had a little capital. I didn't have to borrow as much. So it was making more money. And I realized that the entire, and this is why I refer to myself as an economy of scale advocate. And what I mean by that is I realized that the more units I had, things like repair costs, things like utility bills, things like landscaping at the property became cheaper because I could use the same manager to go over to the next property. I can use the same manager to go to the third property if it was in the same vicinity. And with more units, remember, I had started off with the 4 or 5 units. Those units were working well. There just wasn't enough to even be an income. And so at that stage, I said, I want it to be known what my direction is and where my path will lead. And I said, I have to do it publicly because when I got to marry an idea. I mean, that's what we had done in the past, right? That's where I got the 30 units. I said, now, instead of us having a goal where we're going to somehow magically get a multifamily property, I'm going to take that same commitment level and say, I will have 500 doors of passive income real estate. Because if I'm married to that idea, I say, we're committed to doing this, and I do it in a public way where people know about it, guess what happens? People
More
start saying, so, yeah, where you at? Where you at with that goal, by the way?
Yeah.
So it keeps you accountable, but it also allows people to buy in to where you're going and help you, which is something that I think people love to help people.
Yeah, for sure.
And so when they know where you're going and you're clear about where you're going, they'll definitely help you. Did you find that? Did you find that in your?
I did. It's actually more true than you know, because I actually started getting people. They were becoming familiar with the 500 doors slogan, kind of the brand, the social media hashtag that I had put out there. They started becoming familiar with it. And I'd have complete strangers, people I did not know, that knew somebody that knew me, reaching out to me. And at one point I got a 5-unit apartment complex because someone had tracked this 500 doors brand.
Wow.
And they were backed up on taxes. They did not know where to turn. It was an inherited property. So it was a property by which, they didn't know what to do with it, basically. Sure. And it was about to be sold at a tax sale. And they said, we have seen your 500 doors thing on social media. I just wanted to reach out to you. Is there anything you can do? And I got a ridiculously amazing deal on a 5-unit apartment complex because essentially they saw my brand.
Wow.
So it took on a monetization of form.
Sure.
And then there was also just the mere fact that everybody always asks me, hey, how many doors you're up to? and so it made it where I'm not going back. I'm not going back. And I'll tell you this, quite honestly, it even more than just it being something where, okay, this is my goal.
Yeah.
I wanted this to be something where I said, this is my mantra. I see freedom on the other side of 500 doors. And what I mean by that is I had done the math at some point. We got to 30 units. That worked. I started getting more units. And I said, if we get to 500 doors, this is a different level. We're reaching something where we can be operating with deals at a very different level, because at that point, you just do the math. I don't even care if they're rented below market value. There's a certain amount of scale that's happening that we can take back our life and own time. Wow. And that is really what was the motivation there.
And how do you feel like you use debt now versus how you used to use debt, or how you say it, debt used you?
Yeah. So debt used me, and it used me really bad. And so because, truth be told, I didn't even look at the credit card agreements most of the time when I would sign on the dotted line. I don't think most people do. No. They make it so easy nowadays, click to agree, or a loan or whatever else, everything. And I truthfully believe this. I a lot of times going back and reading through those documents, even if you're not doing anything with it, whether it's a mortgage, whether it's a credit card statement, is such an education in and of itself, because you'll hear all these fancy terms like due on sale clause. You'll hear adjustable rate mortgage. You'll hear all these things, which, by the way, were a major factor in the 2008 financial crisis, that essentially you may not know the answer, but you start looking it up on the internet. You start getting books out at a library, and you start saying, wait, what does this mean? And you start piecing it together. And so where I found myself is, I said, I wasn't in a position originally, credit profile way, FICO score, to ever use it. So I had to look outside of it, which made me find this whole other world of asset-based lending. And so what happened was, I was opened up to the idea of looking at debt in such a way that I realized that I may be living at a home and in a home, and a home can be an asset later if I resell it. But unless that home is generating income for me, that home is, for lack of a better word, a liability. So I look at my residence, and I look at that as a liability. It's a really nice liability, but that's the way I view it. Now, there's other things that go into that, but making that distinction that appreciation does not mean it's always good,
right,
made me think differently.
How does that confidence, when you walk into a bank, now looking at asset-based lending, what is the confidence that you now have in the bank when you ask them for a loan? How does that fit?
So it's really interesting when I talk to lenders, and I talk to all different types of lenders. I talk to lenders in traditional banks, institutional banks, but quite largely I talk to hedge funds and pools of money, where they are really talking to you to test your financial intelligence. And so oftentimes what has happened is, in the past, they would start with, hey, so what's your FICO score? Let's see if we can even carry on this conversation farther. And I realized very quickly that FICO scores were for employees. And I found myself where I wasn't in that category anymore. But the FICO score was really a way the lending institution could damage you if you didn't do what you said, and that would be the last time you'd ever be able to buy an asset. You'd be leasing cars and renting apartments for the rest of your life, and probably not very nice apartments, because they would damage your credibility. That's what the FICO score did. The difference and the distinction was, when it comes down to serious commercial real estate of any kind, where you're doing any sizable transaction, the banks are not looking about damaging your reputation. They're looking at what they can take away from you. And when you realize that, and you build your financial statement that you present to them, which is really kind of the pass just to get the conversation going. It's like, fill out a financial statement, let's get somewhere. And they're testing to see how, right down to, even if you fill it out sloppy, can mean a whole lot. If you're scribbling it on here and you don't add up the liabilities and the assets and you don't balance that out correctly and the total is inaccurate, and right there you'll be disqualified. But my whole thing was learning how to talk by just being rejected, learning how to talk to lenders correctly about the fact that no, we're not talking about my credit score here. I said that has nothing to do with this. I've got a paid off Lamborghini. I've got 1,500 units. Here's my schedule of real estate owned. Take a look at it, put together what my net worth is, and let's play musical chairs and figure out how we can finance this thing. And that is what that distinction right there, when I realized that the big banks, you get a developer in New York City or Chicago or someplace like that, right? Uh-huh. They want to build a skyscraper that's almost $1 billion in value. How can one person ever qualify to finance almost $1 billion in value?
Sure.
I'll tell you, they very much can't do it with their FICO score, so there must be another way.
Great. It's a great point. I don't think, a lot of people appreciate that, and I think even a lot of our clients that have real estate and they have assets, they don't appreciate the scale with which they could operate.
Good point.
Yes.
It's this kind of limited.
I think actually, to follow up on that point, I don't even think they realize what they have sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not even saying that they have an enormous amount. Obviously now I'm at a stage where I have a portfolio of properties, but even a couple properties represented correctly on your financial statement, actually realizing what's an asset, realizing what's a liability, and putting that on there correctly and getting past the whole approval process, which is really a class system that has been created for a solo income person. That's the biggest enlightening thing I found.
A solo income person with no assets.
Yep. Yeah, because they've got nothing. That's fundamentally the whole thing. Because they assume the employee has no assets, they have to base it on their reputation. And essentially the FICO score is to ruin their reputation so that they will never be able to pay and play.
Sure.
Wow. Well,
so go ahead.
We've got to wrap this up pretty soon here.
So in regards to kind of, we've sent you our piece on 7 sources of residual income.
Yeah.
Real estate isn't your only asset. And so can you kind of talk to the listener about just the different channels that you're generating passive income now and kind of where your passion is looking forward?
I would love to. So I operate on a couple different levels. Number one, I own the real estate. But number two, I manage all my own real estate. And that's very important to me because that in and of itself that's a separate entity, right? So I'm managing my own properties, but it really is a separate company that operates the properties to keep better bottom line, to keep better profits. That's very important. The other thing too is I am doing more and more to take my real estate brand, not because I want to create a seminar. In fact, I never really would like to share the secrets in a broad way beyond what I blood, sweat, tears. Now let me bundle that up and give it to you in a little packet. I would hate to do that. But really for the reason that when I had a $30 million deal that I was dealing with recently. That deal I ended up rejecting because the numbers didn't add up. But because they looked me up, that was the credibility, because they found my real estate brand was a way of putting a subject matter on my everyday dealings, right? And that's how I really utilize that. The other thing is in America, at the 2008 financial crisis, there was 55 million Americans that could not qualify for a bank loan. That number is drastically higher now. And so what we do so often is provide now on the other side of things. We've almost flipped and become those lenders in a way where we will provide alternate forms of financing for someone to own their own home, for someone to be able to have a piece of the Americana. Last part is the fact that then I take those securities, those actual, those
Notes.
mortgages that we've created, and those in and of themselves become an additional stream of income.
Wow.
So, it can be part of the same subject, real estate, but there can be a lot of streams that are divided that actually become different businesses and independently stand as pillars on their own.
Wow. It's a great point. So if you guys want to hear more about Caleb Walsh, you can look him up at his Facebook page, which is Caleb Walsh Official. And if his Twitter handle is Caleb Walsh, that's CalebWalsh. Caleb, it was a joy to talk to you. Thank you so much for the way that you're uncommon, for how you help people. And I just want to, I think the audio might have cut out. You do drive a Lamborghini paid off. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I love that.
I didn't just lease it.
So if you have any questions for Caleb or us, please feel free to reach out, like us, subscribe to this channel, give us a good rating so we can get out to more people and we can help people have this uncommon path. This is Phillip Ramsey.
This is Brian Dewhurst.
And you've been listening to Uncommon Life Projects. Thanks a bunch, and we'll be throwing out some more content. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
That's all for this episode of the Uncommon Life Project, brought to you by Uncommon Wealth Partners. Be sure to visit uncommonwealth.com to learn more about our services. Don't miss an episode as we introduce you to inspiring people who are actively pursuing an uncommon life.